Character's Ascension, Nahida. Character's Ascension stats. Here we go. Let's get into this. Her Ascension stat is bonus Elemental Mastery. At level 90, you get a total of 115, or not even level 90, but Ascension 90, so 80 plus. You get a total of 115 bonus Elemental Mastery. One of the few characters in the game that actually has like Elemental Mastery as their Ascension stat. That also means, and it implies, Elemental Mastery Scalar. To the point, I'll spoil it here, you might want to have all Elemental Mastery on her. She is a child model, she's Dendro, and she's a Catalyst user. Not Sword, not Claymore, not Bow, not the other one. Catalyst. That means she also has some nifty animations, but I'm probably not going to show the animations in this review or early look, whatever. Her normal attack thingy does not really matter. It has a cool animation. She does, like plays like Dance Dance Revolution or some shit like that. It looks really cool. But like in terms of anything being unique or whatever, nothing. Doesn't really matter. Like she just does damage like every other character. Her skill though is where it actually is interesting. So let's prepare for a massive reading session. All Schemes to Know is the name of it, and I'll probably refer to it as just her skill for a bit of easy, just kind of knowing. So she sends forth karmic bonds of the wood and the tree from her side, dealing AoE Dendro damage. She has a hold and a tap for this one. You can hold the button down to do an extra effect, or you can tap it. And the tap is just you tap it, and she deals AoE Dendro damage kind of around her, and marks opponents hit with the Seed of Skandha. Remember, Seed of Skandha is a kind of like a debuff on the enemies, essentially. And then when held, it triggers differently. And when you hold it, you enter aiming mode, which will allow you to select a limited number of opponents within a limited area. When aiming mode ends, this skill will deal Dendro damage to these opponents and mark them with the Seed of Skandha. Aiming mode will last up to 5 seconds and can select a maximum of 8 opponents. For aiming mode, as to what that refers to, if you played in patch 3.0, the phase trial event, that event had you literally have a picture-taking mode where it would pause all gameplay, and you can kind of aim at camera and take a picture, and then it will kill all those enemies. But how Nahida's actually works is you just have 5 seconds to like mark as many enemies as you possibly can. You don't have to fit them all into the camera. You kind of just highlight over them and it marks them. Quite a simple, straightforward thing. You got 5 seconds. What this does, the difference here is between the phase trial thingy is that this doesn't pause gameplay. You're not going to press the skill. Gameplay isn't going to pause. The enemies can still attack you, so you have to be rather quick with this, or you have to have some sort of shield. Regardless, moving on to what the Seed of Skandha is. Opponents who have been marked by the Seed of Skandha will be linked to one another up till a certain distance. After you trigger elemental reactions on opponents who are thusly linked, I hit the mic, sorry, thusly linked together, when they take damage from Dendro cores, including Burgeon and Hyperbloom damage, Nahida will unleash, another big name, Tri-Karma Purification. These names are all going to get confusing. I'll try to summarize. They'll trigger Tri-Karma Purification on this opponent and all connected opponents, dealing Dendro damage based on her attack, Nahida's, and Elemental Mastery. Summary. Her skill applies a Seed of Skandha to enemies. Then, when enemies... and that connects all the enemies by a tether, I presume. And then, when one of these enemies is hit by Dendro cores, including Burgeon and Hyperbloom, this kind of incentivizes you to use these reactions, just natural, like Dendro and Hydro, or Dendro Hydro Pyro, or Dendro Hydro Electro. It incentivizes when one of these enemies is hit by one of these, it'll essentially do a kind of like tether damage effect. It hits one, it hits all of them, and that damage is based on Nahida's attack and Elemental Mastery. Now, as for percentages, I'm going to look at level 10 because that's the general benchmark that we can use, no constellations taken in consideration. Tri-Karma Purification damage, at level 10, it's 185% of her attack, plus 371% of her Elemental Mastery. That is rather good. That's a lot of damage. 100, you'll have it generally around, 1,500 plus attack, and with this character, you'll generally have 1,000 Elemental Mastery. That's just prefacing that is probably what you'll have because she's Elemental Mastery Scalar. And you'll probably get, like 10k out of that, 10k damage, because it's 300% almost, plus 200% almost. And you'll get a lot of damage out of this. Regardless, there is an interval though. You have a 1.9 second interval between all your Tri-Karma Purifications. This can be altered with her burst. Generally, the Seed of Skandha, 20 second duration, so it's quite a lengthy duration. I'll be honest with you, quite a lengthy one. The difference between cooldown on tapping and holding, the tap is 5 seconds, the hold is 6 seconds. So very high uptime on this. You can pretty much have permanent uptime on her Seed of Skandha, which is quite crazy, I'll be honest with you, quite crazy, but hey, whatever, whatever. Okay, now back to it. The Elemental Burst, Illusory Heart. This one is gonna maybe not shock people, but this is gonna be quite a good one. Illusory Heart manifests the Court of Dreams and expands the Shrine of Maya. That's just what it does. And when the Shrine of Maya is, or the Shrine of Maya field is unleashed, the following effects will be separately unleashed based on the elemental types present within the party. What does elemental types mean? It just means the different elements. So you'll have Pyro, Electro, or Hydro. It's only those three, bear that in mind. So, when you have a Pyro character in the party, and Shrine of Maya is unleashed, Pyro will, while Nahida remains within the Shrine of Maya, the damage dealt by Tri-Karma Purification from all schemes to know is increased. We'll go over all the values after. What Electro does is, while Nahida remains within the Shrine of Maya, the interval between each Tri-Karma Purification from her skill is decreased. So that interval is decreased. And then Hydro increases the Shrine of Maya's duration. Great. That is great. Now, if there are at least 2 party members of the aforementioned elemental types present when the field is deployed, the aforementioned effects will be increased further. Essentially, you can only have up to 2 levels of increase. So 2 different elemental characters of the same type will provide a bonus. So, for example, Pyro damage at level 10 will provide a 20% damage bonus with 1 character of Pyro, or a 30% with 2 Pyro characters. Electro cooldown decrease at level 10, 1 character will provide a 0.3 second decrease to the interval, and 2 Electro will provide a 0.45 second decrease. And then Hydro will provide a 4 second duration increase with 1 character, and 6.01 seconds, that 0.1 seconds will not matter, with 2 Hydro characters, which is really, really good. Now onto the actual base duration, it's 15 seconds. So at level 10, you can get a total of 21 seconds out of her burst with the Hydro characters, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of little small math that you can look at. You can look at the interval, you can reduce this down to about a 1.5 second interval, and so on and so forth. Energy cost, though, is 50 for this burst, which is quite low. I expect this to actually be increased to maybe a 60. 50 is extremely low for the actual value that you can kind of get out of this burst. But regardless, very good, or very low cost, and the cooldown is 13.5 seconds, so naturally you can have 100% uptime without even getting the duration increase. I expect this to be changed as well. I expect the cooldown to go up to 15 seconds, so you actually have to be on top of your game to do it, but regardless, who knows. Overall, it's very well, but one thing should be prefaced or exclaimed about the burst is that it buffs Nahida specifically. There's no buffing of other characters, it's a her self buff. So you can kind of pick that up when it says while Nahida remains within the Shrine of Maya, and then the damage by Tri-Karma Purification and the interval of each Tri-Karma Purification. So it's pretty much all her stuff that is being buffed. She's not a team buffer, she's a herself buffer, but she's also not an active character or active damage dealer. She's nothing like a Hu Tao. What role will she fill? Just by knowing her skill and burst, she will fill the sub-DPS role. If you want to run a Dendro team where you have, Dendro core damage from Hyper Bloom or Burgeon, then she is almost a must-have because she'll provide such a massive bonus to that. Which is great. That's great. I love that. Power to her. Now, though, moving on to her skills. Her skills are rather interesting, especially one of them. Should be very interesting for people who just like exploring the world. So, her first passive, Nahida's all schemes to know to interact with harvestable items within a fixed AoE. Essentially, you have a small picture mode that can harvest materials, I think plants, I believe not ores, but plants. It can harvest plants from a distance, which is cool. If you don't want to climb mountains to gather items, use her skill. Very good. Her first passive that alters gameplay, though, when unleashing her Illusory Heart or her burst, the Shrine of Maya will gain the following effects. The elemental mastery of the active character within the field will be increased by 20% of the elemental mastery of the party member with the highest elemental mastery. What does that mean? The party member with the highest elemental mastery, 20% of their EM is added to the active character. Naturally, your Nahida will most likely be your highest elemental mastery character if you are rocking her, like, meta build per se. If you also are running Kazuha in the team, he might be higher, but generally speaking, Nahida will be the highest, with roughly about 1,000. You can get a total of 200 elemental mastery in this manner, so you need 1,000 elemental mastery minimum from the highest elemental mastery character in your party to actually get the 200. It's quite simple. It's quite simple. Third passive, which is quite interesting, makes her a bit more of a main DPS, or at least a DPS. Awakened, elucidated, whatever. Each point of Nahida's elemental mastery beyond 200 will grant 0.1% bonus damage and 0.03% crit rate to her Tri-Karma Purification from her skill. A maximum of 80%, not 800, 80 bonus damage can be gotten, and 24% crit rate can be granted to Tri-Karma. So essentially, backwards maths, or do the maths rather, you only need 1,000. Because 800 above it, 80%, and then 24.3, or 0.3 rather. So you only need 1,000 total elemental mastery, or 800 above 200. It just have 1,000 elemental mastery on Nahida. Simple. Going onto her constellations, it's exponential, but here we go. A lot of reading. When the Shrine of Maya is unleashed and the elemental types of the party members are tabulated, the count will add 1 to the number of Pyro, Electro, and Hydro characters respectively. So, what does that mean? It means when you use her ultimate and the characters are tabulated, and let's say you have 1 Hydro, 1 Pyro, and 1 Electro in your party, that means, naturally, without C1, you will just have level 1 of all these effects from her elemental burst. If you do have C1, on the other hand, the C1 will just add 1 to all of those. So it will act like you have 2 of each, essentially making it feel like you have a bigger party, but you don't actually. It's really interesting, really cool, and not going to be overly useful, I'll be honest with you. Unless you're rocking, like, specifically maybe a Burgeon team, it'll be really good there. Or a Hyper Bloom team. If you're just doing a general Bloom team, probably not. But regardless, really good. Really good. For a C1, massive value. C2, though, opponents that are marked by Nahida's own Seed of Skandha will be affected by the following effects. Now, this is a bit of a tricky one to understand, so I'll explain at the end. So opponents marked by the Seed of Skandha will have the following effects. Burning, Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Burgeon reactions can score critical hits. Period. Her C2 enables these reactions that don't generally, burning specifically, they don't crit. But her C2 enables that. But the crit rate and crit damage are fixed at 20% and 100% respectively. So you can't really buff this in any way. So, in summary, you can kind of, for this first part of it, you get 20% crit rate and 100% crit damage to those reactions to enemies affected by her elemental skill. Very good. And then the last part is, within 8 seconds of being affected by Quicken, Aggravate, or Spread, defense is decreased by 30%. Quicken, Aggravate, and Spread are the Dendro Electro reactions. Very good. Whilst all these other ones are the kind of burning, which is Pyro, Bloom, Hydro, Hyper Bloom, Electro, Hydro, Dendro, and then Burgeon, Electro, Pyro, Hydro. So yeah, that is C2, rather good. It's the only time that you will ever see burning potentially crit. I don't think this is a very unique thing, is to enable transformative reactions to actually crit. I don't think any other character has this. Honestly, there isn't actually. I'm just going to say definitively. There's no other character that enables transformative reactions to actually crit. And the good thing that they did was actually fix this at a 20% and 100% crit rate to crit damage respectively ratio. It's really good because that could have been easily overpowered, especially for burning. If you maybe got a high crit rate with a decent crit damage, you could essentially be hitting for 100 Ks per burning, which is actually fucking busted. But that is C2, a high value. Moving on to C4, when 1, 2, 3, or 4 more nearby opponents are affected by her skill, Seeds of Skandha, essentially mark them, Nahida's elemental mastery will be increased by 100, 120, 140, and 160 depending on how many you mark. Elemental mastery boost, it's overall okay. Finally, her C6. Now this one pushes her to be a bit more of a main DPS. I'll preface that now. So here we go. When Nahida hits an opponent linked by all schemes to know Seeds of Skandha, essentially mark them, with normal or charge attacks, after unleashing Illusory Heart, she will use Karmic Oblivion on this opponent and all connected opponents, dealing Dendro damage based on 200% of Nahida's attack and 400% of her elemental mastery. Damage dealt by Karmic Oblivion is considered elemental skill damage and can be triggered once every 0.2 seconds. This effect can last up to 10 seconds and will be removed after Nahida unleashes 6 instances of Karmic Oblivion. Okay. So, when you mark people with her skill and then unleash Illusory Heart, hitting them with normal and charge attacks from Nahida will deal Dendro damage based on 200% and 400% combined of her attack and elemental mastery, respectively. You can deal a total of 6 of these instances, or up to 10 seconds duration on this effect, which is kind of crazy. It does push her to be a bit more of a main DPS, like most characters C6s though. It pushes them to be a main DPS. Essentially, yeah, you can kind of solo things with this, because 200% of attack and 400% of elemental mastery for a character that is going to roughly have around 1,500 to 1,700 attack, and roughly about 1,000 to 1,200 elemental mastery. You can expect, and seeing as this is elemental skill damage, and elemental skill damage can crit, you will probably be hitting about like 30, 40Ks from this if you're lucky, maybe, probably higher, probably slightly lower. Incredibly high damage from this, let's be absolutely real. Now, some people are probably wondering, how the hell are you going to get 1.2 thousand elemental mastery from a character? No other character can really get there that easily. Well, when there's a weapon in the game by the name of 1,000 Floating Dreams that gives you 264 elemental mastery alongside its as its substat, that's how you can get there. This is her weapon. This is Nahida's weapon. Substat is elemental mastery to a total of 264.61. That's a lot. And then she also has bonus elemental mastery from her ascension stat of 115. With just the weapon and just her, you're sitting at a solid 400. Give or take 20. So you're sitting at a solid 400 with just that. Then add on to the fact that you have 3 different artifact slots that give roughly 200. You're instantly already sitting at 1,000 just like that. All you need to do now, and obviously if you have a C6, then you have C4, which gives a bonus 160. And then also if you have some bonus elemental mastery on the substats of your 2 other artifacts, as well as the actual 2 set bonuses of, let's say, Wanderer's Trope and the Gilded Dreams, you're sitting at a solid, very, very solid 1,200 to 1,300 elemental mastery, which essentially makes her an absolute powerhouse of a unit if you have a C6, but even if you have her at just C4 or C2, she's an absolute powerhouse and does everything else. But that's not even taking into consideration the actual ability of the weapon. Now, let me try to explain this one to the best of my ability, because I don't quite understand it still. Party members, other than the equipping character, will provide the equipping character with buffs based on whether their elemental type is the same as the latter or not. If their elemental types are the same, increase elemental mastery by 32. If not, increase the equipping character's damage bonus from their elemental type by 10%. The aforementioned effects can stack up to 3 times. Additionally, all nearby party members other than the equipping character will have their elemental mastery increased by 40. Multiple such effects from multiple such weapons can stack. That last part, a bit odd that they included that, because it kind of makes it sound like you can just have multiple of these weapons equipped across all your Catalyst characters in a party, and everyone just has like an extra bonus 120 EM, which maybe is what they're promoting. I'm not exactly sure. But generally speaking, I don't quite know exactly, I know generally how this weapon's going to work, but not exactly as to what it means elemental type as the same as the latter or not. Does it mean is it the same as Nahida's elemental type, or is it the same as another character's elemental type? As well as what is this aforementioned damage bonus? Increase the equipping character's damage bonus from the aforementioned elemental type by 10%. I don't really know what it means by that. I guess just the 10% damage bonus. If they're not the same element, Who knows? But roughly, you're going to get Elemental Mastery bonus from this, as well as a damage bonus in some way or another. As for the specifics, this weapon still confuses me. And that is Nahida, by the way. That is roughly Nahida. You're going to play her as a sub DPS. I'm going to say that right now. You're going to play her as an absolute sub DPS. She's an absolute unit as a sub DPS. But here's the thing. She's just not any kind of sub DPS. With just her base kit, no Cs, no constellations, you're probably going to use her with a Hydro kind of composition. You're going to go for a Hyper Bloom or a Burgeon reaction team composition, most likely. Because that's where she shines. Her burst, or rather, sorry, her Seed of Skanda and her Trikarma Purification, really, or rather, it just says here, now this Dendro damage from Dendro Cores may be changed to just Dendro damage, but this part here specifically right now mentions Dendro Cores, which you have to have Hydro to spawn, technically. So that kind of maybe limits her in her, you know, party malleability. So naturally, without any constellations, she'll most likely be a Hyper Bloom to a Burgeon team composition, a sub DPS. If you get some constellations, specifically if you get something like C2, you can then potentially run her very easily with all elements, except obviously Cryo, Geo, and Animo, because Dendro doesn't do shit with them, unfortunately. So yes, that is essentially my verdict on how this character will at least play for now. All this is subject to change. This is just a very, 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 very early look at the character. There's still many weeks to come until she's potentially out, or rather she is out, and this all has potential to change. But for now, no constellations, probably going to be a Hyper Bloom team or a Burgeon team, but with at least C2, you can run her with all elements that react with Dendro, specifically Pyro, Burning, which is potentially good, and even Electro Aggravate teams to maybe get that 30% defense reduction. Hopefully this video slash bit of an outlook on the character has helped, and catch you guys whenever the fuck she launches, eh?